Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Rectified podcast. Today, my guest is Jimmy Kim, the CEO of SendLane. For those of you who don't know what SendLane is, it's a unified email, SMS, and reviews platform specifically designed for e commerce companies. Jimmy, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Sandy. Thank you for having me.
Jimmy, let's begin by you telling us about your journey, like what brought you to SendLane.
Sure, absolutely. I'd be happy to start there. So, our story is one of those unique stories. I didn't start SendLane because I had a business idea. I started
Hmm.
SendLane because I had a problem. And so I zapped all the way back to 2013. And in 2013, I had two companies I was running. I was running this affiliate marketing slash content creator company that I had grown up. And then secondly, I had a retail store actually that we just made into an e-commerce store as well too. And at that time, the only tools that I had available as a marketer at that time were I had MailChimp and I had Bronto. Those are the two that I could play that I really needed powers. And unfortunately, MailChimp was very lackluster and it's not different than today. And then we
Hmm.
got Bronto, which no longer exists, but that was kind of like the mecca of commerce back in 2013. So myself and other co-founders, we kind of said, let's just put some money together and let's go build this little platform. So that's what we did. We put money together, we made it, used it, made a lot of money together using it. And for 4 years, that's all we did with it. It wasn't a goal of like, let me go out and market and sell it and all that stuff. We did things to try to get some revenue in there, but ultimately what really mattered was us paying out of pocket for it. Sat back 2017, I was sitting there and I was exiting my this affiliate content creator company became a software company over time. And I was selling the assets of that software company because I was kind of bored of it. And at the same time, I had created differences with my partner in my retail e-commerce store. And we said, hey, let's part ways. And that led me to a place. And I said, hey, I want to go do my next thing. So I looked around and I looked at SendLane and I said, well, we did something really cool with this. We made money with it. We solved some of the major pains that we believed there were problems. Let's go to market and figure this out. So what I did right
Hmm.
away is I knew that I had to get revenue up. So I just sold the thing we had, got some revenue up, led us into a seed raise in late 2018 with the idea that we wanted to rebuild this entire platform to hyper
Hmm.
verticalize and focus directly into e-commerce. So that's what we did. So we raised a bunch of money. And for the next 2 years, 3 years almost, we basically put our head down and we just started building and rebuilding this platform. And on the side, we were just selling the product to basically anyone who would probably buy the product at one point or another because revenue is king and we needed to drive revenue. And then in 2021, we finally completed the platform into a place where we knew we could sell and be competitive. And we went to market. And that's when we made the big shift and said, all right, no more. We're going to get really focused on our ICP. Our
Hmm.
ICP is a brand doing somewhere around $1 million to $100 million plus that are using Shopify, BigCommerce, WooCommerce, or a custom cart. That's really who we aim at. And we usually work with a marketing team. And
Yeah.
so we knew what our company was we're aiming for and we're going after. And so we went to market. And, at first we raised the Series A at that point and raised some money so we can continue to accelerate. And we tried to do a lot of fun things. So we tried to do the brute force way, hired a bunch of BDRs, did that. That created some positive effect, but ultimately it wasn't breaking through. And then over the last maybe 9, 12 months of this year, so zapping back to what? Summer of 2022 to now, we started making a lot of changes within our company. And the changes around the company were really understanding our market and trying to understand where our buyers live and trying to figure out how to get connected with them. And then looking at our incumbents and the companies that we're competing against and figuring out what we can differentiate ourselves around and really focusing that on our go to market is like, let's focus on the places they're not because they're not
Yeah.
everywhere. And let's really make sure that we're being the loudest in those markets. And
Hmm.
that's kind of the playbook we took. I always like to say I took two very unique playbooks that are not secrets in the world, but I took the David versus Goliath playbook and kind of played that
Hmm.
mantra, and then combined that with the idea behind finding a reason to dislike. And what I talk about is like great marriages, but what they say, like people, they're great husband and wives, they hate the same things, right? Like, so I said, hey, what do we not like? And how do we highlight
Okay.
that specific pinpoint, focus on those as a problem and show the market why we've solved it and made those things better, combine that with all the other things that we can do
Hmm.
to go create that like real awareness into market. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what we did to kind of create that breakthrough in the market to find product market fit. I think the product and the market was there. We just had to find a fit, which is them accepting us
Mm.
and honestly getting the trust built within us
Yeah.
as we did that.
So you give them a solution to their problem just in a simple way. So, what kind of problems that they have, like these direct to consumer brands, they're not small. You're seeking seven figures and more, right? So these are your ideal audience, your ideal market. So what is the problem, the main issue that you're solving with
So
Sendly?
So the biggest problem is we unify the stack. We're eliminating tools to help them
Mm-hmm.
save them money while giving them more power on their technical stack than they've ever had before because we've unified those together.
Okay.
So the number one thing I tell people is I help companies save time, save money, and make more money. So that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of our North Star when we think about our product. What are we focused on? So
Yeah.
that's why people come to Sorta. So generally, when we're bringing a customer on, I'm displacing 3 tools at once and bringing them under one roof. So that's a
Mm-hmm.
significant lift on removing the stack ultimately from us
Yeah.
in a world where tech stacks is like the thing that people do. I'm trying to kill the tech stack ultimately.
Mm-hmm. So mainly it's email, SMS, and reviews all in one.
Correct today,
That's
right?
that.
And that's not
Um,
a future vision, but that's
yeah,
today right now.
that's what's happening today.
Yeah,
Exactly. So for companies that are making 7 figures and more, they're using your tool or platform and they're sending all those emails and SMS. What are they benefiting other than having everything in just one space? Like
absolutely.
why should they, for example, move from what they're already using to you?
Absolutely. So outside of all that, it comes down to technology, right? So, being a newer tool, we kind of took a lot of the cutting edge approach across our tool, and we worked through different things. So, number one, we just have a much easier to use UIX experience in general. It's something that people
Hmm.
really appreciate our platform. I always say that the ease of use, but the robust when you want to get into it, right? The
Yeah.
second thing that people come over for a lot of times is customer support. I mean, really, we've always had a very strong mantra around customer support all the way from the days that I started my last 2 businesses. And I've put that effort right back into this company. And what I mean by that is not really the reactive support. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the migration, the ongoing support, the real human connection that we create between the customer and our company as well to make that a partner, not just a client, right? So those
Hmm.
are things that we work on. And then really it's tool setting, right? So when you talk about it, right? I always talk about this. The way our platform was designed was thinking about the next evolution of what retention marketing is today. So,
Yeah.
all the same people, we all do the same playbook. It's the same playbook that people have been following for 20 years in this market, which is they set up drip campaigns, newsletters, and they do the same basic segmentation. And sure,
Hmm.
got a little bit more advanced because we have more data than ever. But
Yeah.
what SendLane really empowers people to do is actually create real hyper personalized experiences beyond the click, ultimately beyond intent and
Hmm.
the signals that they have. So our platform is well integrated, so super integrated. So if you're on Shopify, for example, you're bringing hundreds of points of data. So you're getting all the data points. Then you take the behavior elements of email, SMS, on-site behavior, your reviews elements, all those things and put them together. And now my intent learning is very different with them. If they click on red shoes, I know they
Hmm.
clicked on red shoes and I'm going to send them more about red shoes, not send them another campaign about another sale ultimately, right?
Yeah.
And having more power than ever. So like those are just the simple things. I mean, there's so many other things that are just really powerful about our
Hmm.
platform, but those are what most people are really attached to when they think about
Speaking of these little details like clicking on a red shoe, they like the red shoe, etc. I worked with multiple 7 figure businesses and I was surprised that some of them don't do anything. Like they have the basic email setup, like your order has been placed and your shipment is on the way. Things like that that are already on Shopify, they're integrated. You don't even need to think about this, but they get all their sales from ads that they're putting on, Facebook or Instagram or whatever, Google, but
Sure.
they're not doing anything in terms of email and SMS and reviews. And I'm surprised. So, what do you say to these people? Like, regardless of how much money they're making, they're neglecting this part of the equation in their
Sure.
digital marketing. Like, what can they do? What should they do, to make even more money? Because at the end of the day, you're helping them convert more clients, whether it's existing clients or new clients mainly.
Absolutely. So I start off with the standpoint, right? So if you're a direct to consumer doing e-commerce, your store should be generally making 30 to 40% of its revenue using your email and SMS channel. And that's your retention channel. Basically,
Mm-hmm.
look, we all prospect, we spend all this time working on prospect, but let's be honest, like most your customers are generally the repeat customer that drives LTV and revenue for your company. So when we first start talking to a customer about it, it's very much simply asking how much revenue are you driving from your channels? and why aren't you driving the channels, right? And starting
Yeah.
to understand that. And often you're right, Sandy, like a lot of companies don't put a lot of emphasis on it because they don't understand it. They might have a strong positive sentiment towards what
Mm,
email and SMS might be. There might be a lot of reasons, or maybe their top of the funnel is just incredibly good right now and they don't think about it. But a lot of
mhm,
people get that this is supposed to be a main driver of revenue, some one of your most significant drivers. And we kind of explain why, and we try to lay it out and give them all the easy to use tools. Now, reality of it is a lot of companies just don't have the expertise or the people to do it. That's really where agencies come in. A lot of people, like I always tell brands, like you're doing like $1 to $10 million, like most likely you're going to get better effect out of an agency than ever hiring in house right now because it just doesn't work for most people because it's unscalable. Your guy that takes you from 1 million to 10 is not going to be the same person that takes you from 10 to 20 to 30 40. And that's different because the skill set starts to change.
mhm.
So, what we talk about companies is not just about what we can do, but why you have to have the right tool and then the right partners or the right people operating those tools in order to create those effects. And again, it really comes down to the company, right? And where are
Yeah.
they? Their top of the
Yes.
funnel is working incredibly well and they just don't care. Then what is it up to us to say, like, to go do something? So,
Well, I think they can. I mean, if they can make more or increase their customers' LTV, I mean, why not? Someday, maybe Facebook won't exist, or you want to reduce your budget there and increase what you're doing in the retention side. There's so many things. I think having a balanced mix in your marketing efforts is much better than putting all your eggs in one basket. So I'm always surprised when I see these brands not putting an effort in marketing. Many of them also think that um, it's a lot, like for example, now the holiday season is coming up, like fourth quarter of the year, which is the most important one for the ecom brands. And many of them were like, oh, I don't want to bombard them with like emails every day, for Black Friday or something. And they're going to unsubscribe. So what? But there are so many people who are going to stay there and buy. So what can we say to these people, like, to convince them that it's okay to keep doing this and to like diversify their efforts?
I always remind people one thing, right? Consumer behavior is what we should be thinking about, not what people are thinking about your company. So when I tell people is, look, anytime there's a major holiday, anytime there's a major event, Black Friday, Christmas, Memorial Day, Labor Day, any of those days, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let turn it around and say to the customer, what do you expect happening on those days? Well, there's great sales. Car companies are having sales. Furniture. Well, why can't you have a sale? It's the one time the consumer is giving you permission to
Hmm.
send you things that they're selling because they expect it. So I actually turn this over to the customer often. I say, sending messages is different. When you don't have a brick and mortar and it's not a place where people are walking around and visiting, you're very forgetful when you're a brand ultimately. And the reason why it's important to stay in communication is A, just for brand awareness to stay in communication. And then B, they expect it. And then to your point of unsubscribes, attrition is normal. When someone walks in your store and they walk out and they never show back up, that's attrition the same way. On
Yeah.
e-commerce, when they subscribe to your site, they showed a little bit more intent than the average Joe, but there's a million anonymous visitors that also visit your website that you've never even seen before. So to me, it's unsubscribes are important, actually. I think that
Hmm.
getting rid of the people that don't want your messages is good. It's going to save you
Yeah.
reputation on domain delivery, deliverability. That's going to help you save costs on your actual sending. And third,
Yeah.
if they don't want your message, let them go. And it's not a big deal, right? They weren't
True.
probably going to buy from you anyways. And if they are going to buy from you, they'll come back and find you. And, they just didn't like your marketing approach.
Hmm.
That's really what it comes
So
down to.
true.
But yeah, I always say
It,
send.
it's not a good fit. It's as simple as that. I know some people who actually go, like, of course not the owners, but like they have their email person who just goes to the list and starts cleaning up to increase, the deliverability rate. I mean, it's a good thing to have those unsubscribes, just like you said. Out of curiosity, how big should an email list be for it to create like the big profits that you always talk about?
Yeah. So it's interesting. That's a great question. I don't think it's a lot to do with the email list. It really goes back to the revenue of the company and what they're doing online because
Mm,
you could have a $10 tchotchke company with little tools or little trinkets and have a million customers, or you could have a $5,000 high-end brand company with a very tiny list. So it really comes down to revenue ultimately and
mm,
what that like it's two things. It's what's your total revenue, and then what's your repeat customer rate that you're working towards, right? Like those two things will drive out your retention program and give you an idea. But generally, honestly, like up to about $1 million, a lot of the retention stuff is a little bit hit or miss until you start creating some establishment. And then really looking at, again, the split, right? What is the repeat buy? What is your split between customers and prospects? What is your LTV? And like trying to understand like what it's going to take to get those persons to the next kind of plateau almost.
Let's talk about some of our listeners here are smaller brands and they have no idea about what they're going to do. Let's talk about just in general, what can they do to actually build that list or create those relationships with their people, regardless of the level of their income?
Ooh, that's a great thing. So it really starts with copywriting. I would say that the place that I see a lot of brands, even when they're small, fail often is they can't create connection with their audience. And what I mean by that is being able to talk to them and converse with them and have a brand voice instead of
Yeah.
just selling them. A lot of times when you're smaller, the people don't buy you because you're solving just a problem. They're also buying you because they like the brand, they like the position, they like the mission, especially a lot of the younger generation. So
Hmm.
being able to expose your voice and being able to show them more and beyond, combine that with like alternative channels to connect with you. I think that, when I always look at people and what I say about the market that's changed a lot is you have to be where the buyer is now. You have to go
Yeah.
find and connect with the buyer where they are. Not everyone checks email. Not everyone checks SMS. Not everyone checks Instagram DMs or their Twitter. You
Hmm.
find them. Some are on
Yeah.
Discord. Some are on Facebook. I mean, they're everywhere. And
Yeah.
ultimately, and this is something that I see with smaller businesses fail often is they try to do everything. And the reality is you need to find your core market and work there and find a
Hmm.
simple line of communication so you get to scale where you can start opening up other channels. You shouldn't have to open up more than a couple channels until you're like 20, 40, $50 million in revenue. Until then, like there's
Yeah.
so much available in that one or two single channels when you're working
Mm.
through.
I'm going to clip this and put it on my social media because I keep talking about this to the smaller brands I work with. And I tell them, focus on where your audience is, one or two channels, capitalize on that. You don't have to be everywhere. And people, it's natural, I think, to like go out of the next shiny object. Like today there's threads, tomorrow there's something new,
Yeah.
every day there's a new platform that's appearing here and there, and people feel like, oh my god, we need to be everywhere. No, you don't have to be everywhere, but I do believe that email is one of the channels that they should start early on, just to get to, first of all, get used to it, get used to just creating, writing things down and creating
Sure.
copy. And of course, building those lists. Like once you're in a more advanced stage, it becomes like a different game and you need people to help you out. But it's good to have at least something on social media and their emails. So yeah, I really like this. It's gonna go
No,
as a
I'm
short
I'm I'm
clip.
glad you recognize it. I think a lot of the problem stems from a very simple problem, actually.
Mm,
People, we do this too. You do this too. We look at the largest brands in the world and we look at them and we say, wow, I want to be like them. And they're doing this stuff. And that mean I need
yeah.
to do that stuff as well too. And people often forget. I also have 1,000, 10,000 employees behind them, allowing them to do that kind of energy and different things that they're doing. And
Hmm.
honestly, a lot of them, they don't make the sales because their product or their email marketing or their calendars are great. They make sales because their brand equity is incredibly strong now at this point. And that's where people forget that the trust element of brand equity is where they miss a lot, right? And they think
Mm,
that if you're everywhere, people will think, "Oh, you're everywhere." The reality is no one's seeing you because you're spread too thin
yeah.
ultimately.
You don't have the team, you don't have the people to create all this content and,
You don't have the brand.
manage. Yeah, you don't have the brand. Exactly. It's better to build those relationships in one or two spaces and then grow from there
Correct.
once you're able to scale. What else can we say to like these people? Why should they really focus on SMS? Like we talked about email a lot, but let's talk about SMS. It becomes more personal. I'm receiving a lot of SMS from brands and I'm like, why are they texting me? Like just stop it. Send me emails. So what's going on in that world? Tell me a little bit more about it.
I have a really strong feeling around this, and I'm gonna kind of share what I think. So I'm gonna zap back on email marketing, right? I'm gonna
Mm,
talk about that. If we look back 20 years ago in email marketing, what did we do, right? I was a marketer back then. We batched and blast. We would take a list and we'd send. Well, unfortunately, somehow along the way, SMS kind of up that same habit. And even though we've evolved past this in our email marketing stage, some reason or another in SMS, we still are stuck in that realm. And to your point, I agree with you. I don't think SMS is a blast channel as much as it's a channel to help push the sale along, time sensitive messages and things that are very urgent. So when I think
Mm,
about, like, if I'm a brand and I'm out there advertising, I'm advertising by sending SMS every day. What I'm doing is I'm sending email every day or every couple days. And I'm using
yeah.
SMS to help push those things along to people who click. Maybe I'll send them an SMS and let them know, you didn't complete your sale. Or I might say, I've got 12 hours left on this sale. Let me just give you a friendly reminder that you got 12 hours to make a decision, right? It's a push channel in that
Mm,
you allows you to push the person over. Doesn't mean that you can't go out and sprinkle big blasts out. It just isn't as effective as when there's intent behind it. To your second point, talking about like email versus SMS, here's the bigger thing that I've really recognized and understood. It's really very marketing centric at the core of your audience. And what I mean by that is very simple. Older generations, older demographics are more sensitive. The more older the generation is, the more sensitive they are to SMS. The
yeah.
younger the generation, the less sensitive they are to SMS. And it's actually incredibly fun. When I talk to my younger employees in my company and the team members there, what I
Mm,
find really important is I will be like, how many SMSs do you have on your inbox right now? They'll show 150 unread SMSs. Kind of what we do in email a little bit in a lot of the older generation, or email inbox starts second. They treat
yeah.
SMS the same way. So to go back to that entire point is, you got to be where your audience is. If your audience is on SMS, you need to be on SMS. It doesn't mean that everybody is
Mm,
going to be on SMS. It purely means the people who want to be on SMS are on SMS. However, how you treat them is very important. When I see a lot of
mm,
SMS strategies and programs from people, their attrition rate sometimes is extremely high. And that means that they're losing more people than they're actually being able to add on the top of the funnel. So their SMS lists either stay stagnant or decline slowly. And it's a shame because it really is a use of over messaging that occurs to it because, well, it's easy. It's easy to write
mm.
140 characters and put a quote than it is to build an entire email and have strategy behind it and mindset
So
behind it.
true.
It's different
Yeah.
work. And I get it. But at the same time, I think that abusiveness, and to your point, Sandy, what you just said, all these brands are, that means that you're probably not even paying attention to most of them. You're just on there because you don't want to say, because you probably want to know more about the future, which means that the brand is wasting a lot of money. Right.
Mm,
So
so
there's a
true.
lot of different things there. I think regulation will continue to come down, which will change some of this stuff. I think that consumers will continue to get smarter about it. SMS is not a channel to die, but it is a channel to evolve ultimately. And I think that
Mm,
knowing SMS is this old 90s telephone made system of relays and towers and carriers, it's actually a really archaic system. And it's incredible that it's now become so relevant here today. But I can tell you right now, like, SMS has a lot of broken systems that don't
mm,
allow it to scale very fast. And it's not about us or anyone else. It's literally the
mm.
actual technologies there. So I know there's future thinking around RCS, there's WhatsApp, there's
Yeah.
all these different digital native different things that people are
Yeah.
working on. But reality is, how do you get the world to change? We're talking about another movement like the cable creators, like cable TV, and then it moved to digital TV. Remember how
Yeah.
long that took? That took almost 20 years and it's still not over. That's the
Yes.
same
True.
thing's gonna have to happen to
True.
SMS as well too.
So mainly SMS works if done right. That's what you mean. Like this whole thing, you have to do the right strategies and send the right messages, probably at the right times and to the right audiences. But can we segment SMS just like we do with email?
Yeah,
Is that a
absolutely.
possibility?
That's the
Okay.
thing, like, it's all there, and that's why I
Mm,
said, like, it makes no sense why we all follow this old playbook that we've already known fails, but we're putting that into play on SMS, and people
yeah.
do this. Again, I think it's because it's easy. It's easy to send an SMS revenue, and,
Mm,
sometimes it's the marketer who doesn't pay attention to the cost. So, like, I send an SMS, it costs me $500 to send it, and though I might turn, let's say, $900 of it, but with your time, effort, and cost of behind it, it actually
mm.
was a negative ROI aspect. Where email, yeah, it takes more time to put it, but there's no the cost is inherently much cheaper. And so
Yes.
your ROI also drives better. And the reality of it, Sandy, at the end of the day, and why I say it is very simple. I know everyone says, oh, everyone's on mobile, everyone shops on mobile. But the reality is like, when you look at the people's actual flow, they shop on mobile, but they buy on desktop often. It's
Yeah.
actually very much standard.
That's what I do.
Yeah, and people always go, "Well, why does that happen?" Well, here's what happens. They see the sale or they see something they like, they browse it on Facebook, they get off, they go to the computer, and they wanna
Mm,
look at it more. The buying behavior of trust on a computer is so much significantly higher than an
true.
SMS. That's
True.
all it really is.
Yeah. It's interesting also that SMS, like I'm in Canada and you're in the US, and when I buy from places in the US, I receive SMS, but if I buy from Canadian brands, it's still in the early stages here. Like not a lot of people are using that. So it's also interesting to see that behavior and probably the location of your clients if you're sending globally or, if you're in North America, like the whole continent.
And then if you go to
Um,
Europe, for example, or Asia, they don't even look at your SMS if you
no.
send an SMS. They're on
Yeah.
WhatsApp, Echo Talk, Telegram.
Yes.
They're on everything but SMS. And people
Yes.
are mind blown as a brand. And I always say the same thing to everyone. I said, well, what are you on? And they're like, well, I'm not on there either. Well, why
Mm,
would you let your customers be on there?
yeah. Yeah. Exactly. WhatsApp is very big in other countries, but in North America, it's just a regular text. It's different behavior that we have in regards of SMS and email, like all of these tools that we have. Jimmy, I feel like we can talk about this like for 1 more hour, but I always try to keep the episode short, around 30 minutes. So I'm gonna ask you three questions to like wrap this episode up, and you'll have to answer it like the quickest way possible. Are you ready?
Sure, let's do it.
So, how would your friends describe what you do for a living?
He sells stuff on the internet. But it's actually my parents, even to this day, they still think I fix computers. Like that's how they think
Oh
about
my
me.
God.
Like I'm like it's too hard to explain sometimes. So you just kind of explain. And I tell my friends like I'm the middleman that takes your favorite brand and gets it to your inbox, and they look at me with two heads. So
What, like, what?
cool, man. That sounds great.
That's pretty interesting. Question number two. What is one thing that your program, in this case, your platform, did for a client that you didn't expect? Like it was something very nice and unexpected.
I mean, it's always revenue. I mean, it's always so
Yeah.
exciting to watch companies have huge significant launches or, make a lot of money for their company than they've
Mm-hmm.
ever done or to save time with it and make money. That's the most exciting. There's nothing more exciting than when I see someone send an email out and they make a bunch of money on it. Like I'm proud because I know I'm empowering that. And that money, though it's for a business, that money trickles down and like pays their
Exactly.
employees, pays their local, pays all these people. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
trickle economy of how it helps out the world, right? So
Exactly.
I'm not saying I'm saving the world by any means, but I do empower businesses to at least make
Yeah.
more money so they can use more money in the market. So
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Last question. Is there a book that changed your life or your perspective on something and you recommend it to our listeners?
I mentioned earlier about customer service, and that root stems from actually a book that I read way back in 2011 called Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh, the
Mm-hmm.
late Zappos founder that passed away, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
his book kind of talks about the Zappos mantra and how they thought about support. And I really read that and I resonated with the fact that like it is important. Like differentiation is not only about what your product or service does, it's also the way that you treat people ultimately and how they perceive you and how their brand voice is taken in.
Mm.
So I read that book and multiple times over the years, and I continue to apply it within 3 businesses now, and it's definitely served me well in this market, especially being that it's what people talk about. When people say SendLane, they say their support is incredible, and it's like,
Yeah.
boom, like 1, 2, that means that that is the barrier that most people are worried about most. You eliminate that barrier, then it's just a straight tool selling thing, and it makes it so much easier. So,
Mm.
Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh is probably the book that I will always lean on because I think it's the best book that if more businesses read this, they wouldn't die so
Yeah.
fast because they would be able to talk to their customers.
I'm gonna well, we link to everything in the description of the podcast, so I'm gonna link to this one too, and we hope that somebody will be influenced by your choice and they will read it too. Jimmy, tell us where they can find you and how they can join or test SendLane.
Sure, absolutely. So to find me, I'm on Twitter and I'm on LinkedIn. Those are the two channels that I mostly participate in. So Twitter, I'm at Yo Jimmy Kim, and then on LinkedIn, it's just Jimmy Kim. You just find me around it. How can you learn about us? Well, we can come to our website. We've got a really great website that teaches you everything about our platform. You can book a call with us. We've got automated demos available for you if you want to go that way, or you can sign up for a free trial and play with it yourself. So we've got a lot of options there. Obviously, we're here to help and support you however we can. And yeah, and don't hesitate to reach out to me directly. I'm happy to respond and whatever that might be.
Perfect. Thank you, Jimmy, for being a guest on my podcast and all the listeners. I'll be back next week with a new episode.